The rain lashed against my windshield, blurring the streetlights into hazy halos. My phone buzzed again. Another ping for a late-night delivery. I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes. It was almost 2 a.m., past my usual cutoff time, and this new order had popped up out of nowhere. An address on White Cloud Drive, deep in a neighborhood it'd never driven through before. Not part of my regular route. Not even close. But it paid well, double the usual rate, and I needed the cash. Besides, what could be so bad about a quick stop and drop? White Cloud Drive turned out to be eerily deserted. Houses stood silent and dark, their windows like vacant eyes staring into the night. The silence was broken only by the drumming of rain and the whine of my engine as I navigated the narrow, overgrown streets. The streetlights flickered, casting long, skeletal shadows that danced with the wind. I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. This wasn't right. Then, at the end of the block, a single porch light blazed, illuminating a weathered Victorian house like a beacon in the darkness. A wave of relief washed over me. Someone was home. Finally, I parked on the curb, rain soaking into the car's faded upholstery. My phone buzzed again. A message from the customer. "Hurry, please. It's important." The words were clipped, almost frantic. I grabbed the food bag and stepped out into the night. The air felt heavy, thick with an oppressive stillness that seemed to press down on me. I walked towards the porch, my footsteps echoing on the rain-slicked pavement. Raising a fist to knock, I hesitated. Something about the house felt off. A disquieting stillness hung in the air, broken only by the relentless drumming of the rain. It was as if the entire neighborhood held its breath, watching me. I rapped my knuckles against the aged wood, a sharp sound that seemed to crack the silence. After a moment, the door creaked open a sliver, revealing only darkness beyond. A figure shifted within, a fleeting silhouette framed by the dim porch light. My heart gave a nervous thump. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking slightly in the stillness. "Delivery for?" The words died on my lips as the figure stepped fully into view. A pale face emerged from the shadows, gaunt and drawn, with hollow eyes that seemed to devour the light. They wore a threadbare robe, its fabric clinging to their bony frame like cobwebs. Their expression was unreadable, their silence more unnerving than any growl or shriek. "Leave," a voice rasped, barely audible above the rain. It seemed to come from somewhere deep within the figure's chest, a whisper that felt less like words and more like an echo from a forgotten tune. "You weren't supposed to find this place." The air grew colder, a sudden chill that seeped into my bones despite the humidity of the night. My grip tightened on the food bag, its warmth a fragile comfort against the creeping dread. I wanted to retreat, to slam the car door shut and flee back into the relative safety of the deserted streets. But something held me there, rooted to the spot like a deer caught in headlights. "I just have a delivery," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. My mind raced, scrambling for an escape route, any excuse to break free from this unnerving encounter. The figure didn't respond. They simply stood there, their eyes boring into me with an intensity it felt like a physical assault. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until it seemed the very air was holding its breath. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. My gaze darted around the porch, searching for anything familiar. Any clue that this wasn't some macabre nightmare unfolding before my eyes. But there was nothing but darkness and shadows, twisting and shifting like phantoms in the flickering porch light. The figure continued to stare, their expression unchanging, a mask of ancient sorrow, or perhaps something more sinister. I felt a cold sweat prickling on my skin, despite the clammy night air. This wasn't right. Something was deeply wrong. Driven by an urge I couldn't explain, I took a hesitant step back. "Look," I tried again, forcing myself to sound calm. "I don't want any trouble. Just need to drop off this order and—" My words trailed off as the figure reached out a skeletal hand, not towards me, but towards something behind me. Something unseen. A shiver ran down my spine. The porch creaked, a low groan that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the house. It felt less like an old house settling, and more like a living thing sighing in weariness. My eyes darted back to the figure, their face now obscured by shadow, but their hand still outstretched, trembling slightly. Then from behind me, a sound, a whisper, barely audible above the rain. Not words, but a chorus of sighs, murmurs, and rustling like dry leaves skittering across pavement. It seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once, swirling around me, pulling me deeper into an unsettling void. The figure's hand tightened, its knuckles bone white against the darkness. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt leaden, rooted to the spot like a puppet with severed strings. The whispers intensified, weaving around me, forming shapes in the shadows that flickered and reformed with each gust of wind. It felt like I was standing inside a dream, reality bending and twisting at the edges. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the eerie symphony of unseen voices. I couldn't tear my gaze away from the figure on the porch. They were still shrouded in darkness, yet now there seemed to be movement behind them, a ripple in the shadows as if something vast and intangible shifted within. It was as if the house itself was breathing, inhaling the whispers and exhaling an oppressive stillness that pressed down upon me. Fear turned my breath thin and ragged. I wanted desperately to break free from this suffocating tableau, but every muscle screamed with a paralyzing inertia. My mind, however, raced, scrambling for an escape hatch. Any shred of logic in this unfolding madness. This couldn't be real. It had to be some elaborate prank, some warped performance art. But the whispers, the cold air, the figure's unblinking gaze, they were undeniably real. Suddenly, the figure on the porch tilted its head, a subtle movement that seemed to amplify the chilling silence. The whispers stilled, replaced by an expectant hush. My stomach lurched. It felt like all eyes, unseen and countless, were upon me, scrutinizing every tremor, every gasp for air. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. I couldn't utter a single word. Then, as if responding to the unspoken question burning inside me, the figure on the porch took a step forward. It didn't move quickly. No menacing lunge or sudden rush. Instead, it glided towards me with an unnatural fluidity, each movement slow and deliberate, like a marionette guided by unseen strings. My legs finally responded to my panicked brain, pushing me backwards. I stumbled, tripping over the uneven ground, sending the food bag tumbling into the rain-soaked gutter. The figure stopped mere inches from me, its face still shrouded in shadow. The porch light flickered, casting grotesque shadows that danced across its gaunt features, twisting them into something almost monstrous. But it was the eyes that truly terrified. They burned with an unsettling intensity, piercing through the darkness as if seeking to devour my soul. A choked sob escaped my lips, a raw sound of primal fear. This wasn't just a creepy encounter anymore. This was something deeply wrong, something ancient and malevolent stirring in the heart of this decaying house. I scrambled back, scrambling to my feet, ignoring the sting of rain stinging my eyes. My gaze darted around frantically, searching for an escape route. Anything. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling around me like a vortex of despair. They seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once, pulling me deeper into their chilling embrace. But something else emerged from the cacophony, a low, guttural moan that resonated from within the house itself. It wasn't human. It was something primal, something ancient. Driven by pure instinct, I turned and ran. I didn't look back, not once. Every muscle screamed in protest as I sprinted down the rain-slicked street, my lungs burning with each desperate gasp for air. The whispers pursued me, a chilling chorus echoing through the empty night. The moans from the house grew louder, morphing into anguished wails that seemed to claw at the edges of my sanity. My car felt miles away, a beacon of salvation in the oppressive darkness. Finally, I reached it, fumbling with the keys, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The engine roared to life, a welcome counterpoint to the haunting whispers that still clung to me like cobwebs. I slammed the car door shut, heart hammering against my ribs, and drove away as fast as I dared, leaving behind the desolate street, the eerie house with its single blazing porch light, and the unseen audience that watched from the shadows. The city lights blurred past my windshield, a kaleidoscope of neon against the backdrop of the starless night. Rain continued to lash against my car, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was the oppressive stillness of White Cloud Drive, the figure on the porch, and the whispers that seemed to burrow deep into my mind. I didn't stop driving until the city lights gave way to the familiar glow of street lamps in my own neighborhood. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes peering through the darkness. I parked my car, my hands still trembling, and got out, needing fresh air, needing to feel solid ground beneath my feet. The normalcy of my own street felt jarringly incongruous after the chilling encounter on White Cloud Drive. It was as if I'd stepped back from a nightmare into reality, but the dream's tendrils clung to me, leaving behind a residue of fear and unease. I couldn't shake the image of the figure's vacant eyes. Their unsettling intensity burned into my memory. The whispers still echoed faintly in my ears, a phantom chorus that refused to be silenced. I tried to rationalize it, tell myself it was just an overactive imagination fueled by fatigue and stress. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next day, I checked online for news reports about any unusual activity on White Cloud Drive. Nothing. The street seemed to vanish from the digital world, as if it had never existed. It felt like a secret kept hidden, a truth buried beneath layers of normalcy. Days turned into weeks, but the memory lingered. Sleep became fitful, haunted by fragments of shadows and whispers. I avoided late-night deliveries, sticking to familiar routes, my usual sense of confidence replaced by a gnawing anxiety. The encounter had shattered something within me, leaving a lingering unease that clung like cobwebs in the corners of my mind. I never went back to White Cloud Drive, but sometimes, when the rain falls hard and the wind whispers through the trees, I can almost hear those mournful sighs again, and I know, with chilling certainty, that something dark slumbers there, waiting for its next unsuspecting visitor.